What if I told you, attraction isn't about how you look, what you own, or what you say. It's about who you become when no one is watching. Stay with me until the end, because the final lessons will truly change your perspective. The most attractive person in any room is never the loudest, the most perfectly dressed, or the most rehearsed. It is the person who is completely at ease with themselves. There is a quiet power in someone who does not constantly adjust their personality to fit the expectations of others. You can feel it the moment they walk in, not because they demand attention, but because they are not asking for it. They are simply there, grounded, aware and present. And that presence speaks louder than any introduction ever could. For a long time, many of us are taught, subtly or directly, that we must earn our place in a room. We change how we speak depending on who we're with. We soften our opinions, exaggerate our achievements, or shrink parts of ourselves just to feel accepted. I've seen this happen across cultures, industries, and even within my own journey. The more you try to become what you think people want, the further you move away from what actually makes you magnetic. Because people don't connect with perfection. They connect with truth. There was a time when I believed that adapting was necessary for survival. And yes, there is a difference between growth and pretending. Growth is when you evolve into a better version of yourself. Pretending is when you abandon yourself to be liked. And the cost of that is invisible at first, but heavy over time. You start to feel disconnected, not because people don't accept you, but because people never truly met you in the first place. That's the moment you realize attraction cannot be built on a version of yourself that isn't real. Owning your presence means standing in your truth, even when it feels uncomfortable. It means embracing your voice, whether it shakes or not. It means understanding that you don't need to prove your worth in every conversation. When you stop trying to impress and start choosing to express, something shifts inside you. Your energy becomes calmer, your thoughts become clearer, and your interactions become more meaningful. People begin to trust you, not because you're perfect, but because you're consistent in who you are. And here's the deeper truth. When you are grounded in yourself, rejection loses its power. Not everyone will resonate with you, and that's not a flaw, that's alignment. The right people are not looking for someone who fits every mold. They are looking for someone who stands firmly in their own shape. When you own your presence, you stop seeing rooms as places where you must be accepted and start seeing them as spaces where you choose to belong. That shift changes everything about how you show up. Because at the end of the day, attraction is not about becoming someone new. It's about removing everything that isn't you. It's about returning to a version of yourself that is unfiltered, unafraid, and unapologetically real. When you walk into any space carrying that kind of energy, you don't need to chase attention. It naturally comes to you. Not because you tried harder, but because you finally stopped hiding. Own your presence, because the moment you fully accept yourself, the world has no choice but to feel it. The moment you begin to rely on others to tell you who you are, you slowly forget it yourself. There is something deeply disempowering about waiting for approval before you allow yourself to feel worthy. You start measuring your value through reactions. A compliment, a message, a nod of validation. And without realizing it, your confidence becomes dependent on things you cannot control. And the truth is, anything that depends on the outside will always feel unstable on the inside. We live in a world that constantly encourages comparison. You scroll, you observe, you measure, and somewhere along the way, you begin to question your own path. Am I doing enough? Am I good enough? Do I belong here? These questions don't come from a lack of ability. They come from a lack of self-recognition. Because when you truly see your own worth, you don't need constant reminders from others to believe it. You don't need applause to feel validated. You become your own anchor. There was a time when I believed that validation was a sign of success. That if people approved of me, it meant I was on the right path. But over time, I realized something powerful. Approval is often inconsistent. And sometimes it comes from people who don't even understand your journey. If you let that guide you, you'll constantly shift directions, trying to meet expectations that were never meant for you. And in that process, you lose clarity. You lose authenticity. You lose yourself. When you begin to validate yourself, something quietly transformative happens. You stop asking for permission to exist as you are. You stop over-explaining your choices. You stop shrinking your voice to make others comfortable. Instead, you begin to trust your instincts, even when they lead you down unfamiliar paths. That trust builds a kind of confidence that is not loud, not performative, but deeply rooted. And that kind of confidence cannot be shaken easily. People often confuse self-worth with arrogance, but they are not the same. Arrogance seeks to prove superiority. Self-worth simply recognizes value. When you know who you are, you don't need to compete, compare, or convince. You move differently. You speak with clarity. You make decisions with intention. And most importantly, you stop chasing validation from spaces that were never aligned with you in the first place. That's when your energy shifts from seeking to radiating. And here's what makes this so powerful. When you no longer depend on validation, you become magnetic in a way that cannot be manufactured. People are drawn to certainty, to someone who stands in their truth without hesitation. Not because they are perfect, but because they are grounded. And that grounded energy creates trust, respect, and connection effortlessly. S. Stop asking the world to confirm your worth. When you finally believe in yourself, your presence will speak louder than any approval ever could. Before you say a single word, before you introduce yourself, before anyone even understands your story, your energy has already spoken for you. It's subtle, almost invisible, but deeply felt. You've experienced it yourself. You've walked into a room and instantly felt comfortable around someone or uneasy without knowing why. That's not coincidence. That's energy. And whether you realize it or not, you are constantly communicating through it. Your energy is shaped by your inner world. Your thoughts, your emotions, your beliefs about yourself. If your mind is constantly filled with self, doubt, comparison, or fear, it creates a certain tension in your presence. You may try to hide it with a smile or confident words, but people feel what is beneath the surface. Not consciously, but intuitively. Because human connection is not built on words alone. It's built on what those words carry. They take 7 days. There was a phase in my life when I focused so much on what to say, how to present myself, how to appear confident. But I ignored what I was feeling inside. And that disconnect showed. Because no matter how polished your words are, if your inner state is unsettled, your energy becomes inconsistent. And inconsistency creates distance. It makes people unsure of what they're experiencing from you. That's why alignment is not optional. It's essential. When your inner world begins to shift, everything about your presence transforms. When you practice gratitude, your energy softens. When you cultivate self-awareness, your reactions become calmer. When you accept yourself fully, your presence becomes lighter. These are not external changes. They are internal recalibrations. And they don't just change how you feel, they change how people experience you. You don't have to try to be magnetic. You naturally become it. Think about the people who leave a lasting impression on you. It's rarely because they said something extraordinary. It's because of how they made you feel in their presence. Safe, seen, understood. That kind of impact comes from emotional clarity and inner balance. When your energy is not chaotic or needy, people feel at ease around you. And when people feel at ease, they open up. That's where real connection begins. So instead of focusing only on your external image, start nurturing your internal state. Pay attention to your thoughts. Become aware of your emotional patterns. Choose peace over overthinking, presence over pressure. Because the truth is, your energy is always introducing you. In every room, in every conversation, in every moment. And when that energy is grounded, clear, and authentic, it speaks in ways words never can. Afazi, align your inner world. Because when your energy is right, you don't have to say much for people to feel everything. In a world where everyone is trying to be heard, the rarest and most powerful thing you can offer is your ability to truly listen. Not the kind of listening where you're waiting for your turn to speak or mentally preparing your response while someone else is talking, but the kind where you are fully present, fully engaged, and genuinely interested in understanding another human being. That kind of attention is deeply attractive because it makes people feel valued in a way they don't often experience. Most conversations today are not conversations at all. They are exchanges of interruptions. People speak over each other, rush to insert their opinions, or redirect the focus back to themselves. And while it may seem like confidence to dominate a conversation, it often creates distance instead of connection. Because when someone doesn't feel heard, they don't feel seen. And when they don't feel seen, they don't feel connected. Attraction doesn't grow in noise. It grows in presence. There is something profoundly disarming about someone who listens with intention. When you give someone your undivided attention, no distractions, no judgment, no rush, you create a space where they feel safe to be themselves. And that safety is powerful. It allows people to open up, to express more honestly, to share parts of themselves they might usually hold back. And in that moment, you are no longer just another person in their life. You become someone they remember. I've learned over time that the most impactful conversations I've had were not the ones where I spoke the most, but the ones where I listened the deepest, where I allowed silence to exist without trying to fill it, where I asked questions not to impress, but to understand. And in doing that, I realized something important. People don't need you to have all the answers. They just need to feel like their voice matters in your presence. When you listen deeply, you also begin to notice things beyond words. Tone, emotion, hesitation, energy. You start to understand people on a level that goes beyond surface interaction. And that understanding builds trust. It shows that you are not just engaging for the sake of conversation, but because you genuinely care. And care is something people are naturally drawn to. It's not loud, it's not flashy, but it's unforgettable. So the next time you find yourself in a conversation, pause. Let go of the need to impress. Let go of the pressure to say something perfect. Instead, choose to be present. Choose to listen. Not just to words, but to the person behind them. Because when you make someone feel truly heard, you create a connection that goes far deeper than any clever sentence ever could. Yes, listen with intention. Because the way you make people feel will always matter more than anything you say.